from the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, this is the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, hosted by Ron Young.
Welcome to Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Nice to have everybody here. Holy cow. So, one of the fun aspects of being a member of our yacht club is you get to meet and bring lots of people to our yacht club. And some years ago, I brought the guy who's become a buddy of mine, Bruce Janagian. Bruce was a kid in San Francisco, as was I. He went to Lowell. He'd like me to underline that. Those of you who know, Lowell was supposed to be a school for smart kids. I don't know how Bruce got in, but he got into the school for smart kids. And then at age 17, he did another great thing. He joined the Navy. And after serving in the Navy for a while, he went off to Hastings Law School, a pretty doggone good law school. My daughter graduated there as editor-in-chief of the Law Journal, so I'm going to say it's a great school. And then he went on to get his second law degree. One was not enough from Bruce's case, so he got one from George Washington University in D.C. And then he served in several distinguished capacities for the U.S. Navy, including in Europe and in America. And he joined the Navy League, which is where he and I got to know each other. And in his spare time, he's even written 3 novels. And I mention all this because our speaker today, who is also quite distinguished, deserved a really, really good introducer. And that would be my buddy, Bruce Janagian. So to introduce our speaker, welcome Bruce Janagian.
Ron is so thoughtful and kind. We are representing the St. Francis and also the San Francisco Navy League today, and we wanted to bring Admiral Nimitz here as your speaker, but Admiral Nimitz is detained. He's out near the airport in the National Cemetery, and we hope you'll give a salute when you pass by. But next only to bringing Admiral Nimitz, we have Captain Randy von Rossum as your speaker because he is filling that position as the head of the NROTC unit at the University of California, Berkeley. And you will see that this is a gentleman of great distinction who has been filling a role which those of us in the Navy will call the role of a surface nuke. Now, you may not know what that means, but that means he doesn't serve nuclear propulsion systems underwater. That would be the submarine nuke. But he serves that function in surface ships, one of which was the USS Nimitz. So he was the main propulsion officer on the Nimitz, responsible for its huge nuclear reactor. And we're going to hear lots more about the career and history of a gentleman that came up from a scientific background as a nuclear engineer and rose to being a squadron commander of destroyers out of San Diego, and has just a tremendous amount of accomplishments. And you're going to hear today about some of his more exciting exploits in the far Pacific region in support of our foreign policy. Captain von Rossum, please.
Thanks, Bruce, for that kind introduction. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. It is certainly a pleasure to be here and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. This mission that I'm going to talk about, I am very passionate about. Outside of my 05 command, I was a destroyer commander. Outside of that job, this is by far the best thing I've ever done in the Navy. And I had no idea it was coming. Kind of a curveball, and I'll talk to how I became the mission commander for this, but it is exceptional opportunity. If you ever hear someone talking about this mission, ask them more about it, and certainly I was fortunate enough to be part of Pacific Partnership 2019. This is what we're going to talk to today. Again, I am free if you want to ask questions during, if you see something that you want to talk more about, I am happy. I could talk to this stuff for hours if need be. And so you can stop me there, that's fine. I know we have a after a more formal question and answer session. But if there's something up here that you really want to get after and learn a little more, happy to talk about it. Please just raise your hand and I'll stop right there. My disclaimer, these are my perspectives, all right, not the Navy perspectives. And so you can ask me anything. I'll tell you what I think, but certainly that's from Randy Van Rossum, not the U.S. Navy, okay? Keeps me out of trouble. Okay, Pacific Partnership. So if you remember, 2004, December, I believe it was the 28th, 2004, there was a earthquake and tsunami in the Indian Ocean. That response, the United States response, was an operation called Unified Assistance. When that happened, as a side note, I was Lieutenant Van Rossum at the time on a frigate headed south to Australia. And they gave us orders, hey, you've got a new place to go. Now, we did get a short port visit in Australia, but then we were one of the first U.S. assets on scene. And we were off the coast of Sumatra, and certainly it was a very, very challenging environment of what we were seeing. Frigates, if you've never been on a frigate, pretty small command, crew around 250, not a lot of extra people, not a lot of extra supplies. But what a frigate, at least we had, was 2 helicopters. And that was pretty critical for the work that we needed to do. Because we were one of the first on scene, they really didn't have a good idea of what was inside the country, what was happening, what was the status. And so sending our helicopters overland and getting a good idea to send back to the rest of the Navy forces so they could plan properly to support was critical, as well as bringing water to remote villages and areas. They were hurting for fresh water after a few days. And so that was our main job. U.S. Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group came a few days later. Certainly they had a ton more capacity than what we had as the frigate, and so the mission, they took over, and then we got sent to Fifth Fleet to spin circles in the Arabian Gulf. And so that was our good deal that we got for the rest of our deployment. The United States, they saw the opportunity from that mission set, and it was an opportunity to build on goodwill by this operation, and so they conceived an annual deployment to this area. And that's how Pacific Partnership started. The aim of the deployment, obviously now called Pacific Partnership, was to improve the interoperability of the region's military forces, the governments, humanitarian organizations during disaster relief operations, also providing humanitarian, medical, dental, and engineering assistance to the nations of the Pacific, and strengthening relationships and security ties between the nations. The first such deployment was conducted in 2006, and it was based aboard the hospital ship USNS Mercy. And I had the privilege of leading the 14th Pacific Partnership mission. Actually, I'm sorry, we're going to go back. Okay. So, I get the word I'm going to be mission commander for Pacific Partnership. It is a pickup game. There is, you've got to find your own people, so to speak. And so typically for a mission like this, they needed a major commander. I was Commodore of Desron 1 out of San Diego at the time. We just finished deployment on USS Vinson, Carl Vinson. And typically your ships will go into a maintenance period after you complete a deployment. And so I was considered the Commodore that was down and usable, and so that's how I got selected. Certainly, I don't think it was because of all the great work I had done. In fact, I was Deputy Commodore at the time. I would be Commodore for the mission by that time, and so I was the pick. They had other Commodores that were prepping for deployments or on deployment, and so I was kind of the one that just finished, and I was ready to go. And so I got selected. First thing I did was call one of my mentors, my former Commodore, when I was captain of USS Wayne Meyer destroyer out of San Diego. His name was Captain Brian Shipman. Mentor of mine, still talk to him, certainly not as much as I should, but still talk to him a lot. and he was Commodore Desron 21, also out of San Diego. And he was mission commander for Pacific Partnership 16. And I had known that, and so I called him and said, hey, I really need to talk to you. I just got told I'm going to be mission commander, so we went and had lunch. And so he filled me. First, he was very excited. He's like, you are going to love this mission. It is something that could, frankly, change your life. And I was like, okay, pretty strong words. Let's see where this goes. And he gave me some pitfalls to worry about. The biggest one being you need to build your team. And we'll talk to this in a bit of how we get people, how you provide the crew of about 500 people for this mission, and where we get those folks from. But he said you gotta build a team, and frankly, the hardest ones were, no offense to some of you out there, medical. Medical was challenging because they're very senior, and the places we're going and the things we were doing pretty remote. And so they had to live a little bit more sparsely than maybe what they were used to. So I'm it. Now I need to select my crew. No ready supplies, right? There's no command out there that just has spare bodies. And so you have to find them yourself from the commands that you're going to pull from. I needed to take care of my Desron as well. I still have a boss, the carrier of the strike group, the admiral. That's who I worked for. He expected my ships to be done with their maintenance and ready to go for the next cycle. And so he was not letting up on any of my home requirements. And so I needed folks with my Desron to take care of my ships to make sure they were okay. But I also needed a core group that I wanted to take with me on this mission, someone that I knew and that I could trust. So as part of this mission commander assignment, they make you go on one of the stops of the prior mission year. So it was May at the time, just got back from deployment that month, and they said, you're going to Vietnam to go see a mission stop there. It was 2018's last stop. And so I took two of my junior officers with me, and they try to pick Vietnam, frankly, because it's the hardest mission stop that we do. It is extremely aggressive as far as the number of projects that we have, and it's very structured and very strict. As a communist country, they don't like change, and it takes a lot of time if you want to change something, and so you really have to be on your game. And so they try to get the next mission commander for that stop just to see the level of detail that you need to be successful in that stop. So we go to Vietnam, and me and two of my junior officers, just to see what it's like. And I will tell you, amazing. I was blown away at what I was seeing. As a Navy person, I'm typically on ships. That's where I'm doing my job. I don't get to see the interaction of the locals. When we pull into port, we're going off and doing, golfing or doing whatever, seeing the sights. But I'm not seeing the response of my efforts, I guess. And so this was completely different. We were going to orphanages, reading to kids. The band would come and play. Dancing, and trust me, you don't want to see this guy dance, but I was out there dancing. It was amazing, and building schools, bathrooms, community centers, and the joy that you would see on very remote, poor areas. The joy you would see on their faces was it was incredible, and it really hit me personally pretty strong, and so I was pretty psyched. I was like, this is going to be great. And so we go back home to San Diego. I had my two junior officers. They were equally as impressed and excited about the mission. And so I briefed my staff. I said, hey, this is what it's going to be like. This is what we saw. This is exciting, but I only want volunteers. Now, certainly, we just got off of deployment. We had a month, and we were going to RIMPAC for the summer, so they were going to be away from their friends and family for the summer. And then Pacific Partnership planning would go all through the fall, and then we would deploy for Pacific Partnership that next spring. So I was very nervous about, am I going to get anybody to raise their hand, or am I just going to have to tell them you're coming with me? And so, orders are orders, got it. I didn't have to do any of that. I was stunned by the people that wanted to come and do this. And it wasn't my lieutenant commanders on the staff. It was my lieutenant junior grades and my lieutenants. Junior people that saw this. My JOs that were on the trip to Vietnam sold it. I didn't have to do a thing. I said I want to interview every one of the people that are going, because I want to know why you're going, to get an understanding and connect with them of this mission. And all different reasons, but they, again, just hand up, ready to go. Tell me what you want me to do. I put them into some pretty challenging leadership roles. Remember, they're very junior officers. These folks have not been out, got their commission maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years, something like that. The lieutenants 4 years, but certainly junior. And they volunteer to be country OICs. So what that means is they run that specific country, everything. They had multiple 06 medical providers working for the lieutenant junior grade. They had senior engineers, CBs, working for the lieutenant junior grade. And again, very unusual, putting them in a tough spot. But I made it very clear at the initial planning conference that those country OICs speak for me. I pick them, and when they talk, that's me talking, and you will listen. And I really never had any issues. The positional authority, they took it and ran with it. They certainly was a team environment, but the work that they did was certainly just amazing. I said we had about 500 total people supporting the mission. We had 9 partner nations as part of the group as well, to include my director of mission, my deputy. He was a captain from the Royal Navy, certainly well experienced. And I also had a chief of staff from Australia who was a captain. Both of them had command multiple times, certainly more so than I had, certainly more well qualified. And so I felt I was in very good hands. Obviously, they wanted a U.S. face to it, and so I was the lead, but these folks were fantastic and certainly very qualified. And we visited 7 nations, and I'll go into that as well. I do want to talk about, again, past mission requirements, or at least what they ended up being. So as this start, it was talked about medical assistance and providing medical support. Earlier Pacific partnerships had all been about that medical support, going somewhere and providing medical assistance, surgeries, you name it. The Mercy was certainly part of most of them because she has such a great capacity. And we're trying to, and the goal was to try to work away from that. That is not what we want to do. We want to build the resilience and capability of the host nation, so that way when we're not there, they can take care of themselves, and certainly makes sense. But it meant not only every time we would go to a country, they would talk about, hey, where's that white ship with the cross on it? And it's like, yeah, she's not here. So every year, just like there's no people, there's also no ships just sitting out there waiting to do a job. The combatant commands have us working, and there's always more missions than we can support. And so when this mission come about, it's, okay, what ships do you have available? And so for my mission, they gave me 2 EPFs. An EPF is an expeditionary fast transport ship. It used to be called a high-speed surface vessel. I think the Army owned them, but now the Navy has them. They carry a lot of cargo. They're fast. They go 35 plus knots. But they can only handle about sea state 2 to 3. Terrible in bad seas. Absolutely terrible. They also, there's a challenge when it comes to housing the number of people on a normal ship. You've got lots of staterooms and all that because we have a lot of 06s and other folks. I do have one. I'll get to a picture of that, yes. Certainly, but on these EPFs, there's 105 people, period, that they can house overnight. They had one stateroom, and that was for me, one. And so I had many 06s in 16-man berthing. And so when I initially was worried about, some of the medical doctors and stuff going into basically enlisted berthing, I thought I'd hear a lot of grief, and I didn't get one peep. Why? Because my chief of staff, who had been commanded multiple times as an 06, he's in enlisted man berthing. And so no complaints at all. And I was the only one that got a stateroom. So pretty challenging from that respect. And because they only carried 105 people, the mission set took hundreds more to accomplish. And so which 105 did you have on the ship? And then everybody else is flying in, staying in hotels and stuff like that. So again, you got to work with people of, well, why do they get to be in a hotel? And why do I get to stay in enlisted berthing and stuff like that? So a lot of things that I had to deal with that I certainly didn't like, but it's part of the job, right? So we do it. Okay. Goals. So this, our Pacific Partnership 19 goals listed in the top mission statement there, given to us by Pacific Fleet. It's a requirement. That's what we were going for. To achieve those goals, there were 4 lines of effort as listed on the bullets there. Line of efforts were adjusted to accommodate the change, again, to enhancing their capabilities, building resilience. That was what our mission was all about. And then the last 3 lines of effort that you see there were always scrutinized through that lens of do they support humanitarian aid and disaster relief line of effort? And so all the jobs we did, the things we built and accomplished, all in the realm of does it support humanitarian aid and disaster relief efforts. The host nation outreach events, some of you might recall they used to be called COMRELs. They wouldn't let us use that name. I still don't know why. The lawyers, maybe Bruce, you can figure that one out for me, but they would not let us call them COMRELs, host nation outreach events. So it didn't really change what we did, but I would say this mission, there was an added emphasis on key leader engagements for religious figures. That was pretty critical, and as we saw, they were critical influencers in the communities where they lived, and that was certainly what we were going after. We also went to orphanages, schools, community centers, but the biggest crowd pleaser was the Pacific Fleet Band. Music. Everybody loved the band. They were amazing, played almost every day. They had very little time off. Everybody wanted to hear them, and those folks were warriors, just amazing talent. They made a difference and broke barriers for us. For each mission stop, they would also learn and played popular songs in the host nation language. So they would play a few of those songs, and when they did that, the crowds would just erupt and go crazy. Clearly, it was appreciated by the locals. So, kind of an eyesore, tough picture here. This was. I wish I had the picture of what the original plan looked like. I can tell you, it was much more simple than what this one is, which is actually what we executed. This is what we actually did as part of our mission. And so we kicked off the mission in Guam, and I'll go into a little bit more detail of the specifics, but in Guam there, and first time I get to see the entire crew together. Remember, I'm bringing them from all different commands. At the beginning of the mission, I had a few that director of mission, my Aussie and my UK brethren, they come for the last month of planning. That was very helpful to get to know them much more in detail. And I had my lawyer, she was with us, and a PAO working, public affairs type stuff. And so built that core team and the team that I was bringing from my Desron. And then but most of the people I have not even seen. And so I see them in Guam. I have like 4 days with them to build this team to go do a couple-month mission, pretty critical. If someone makes a mistake, and certainly we can go into it in the Q&A if you want to get into that, but if someone makes a mistake, it could be an international incident. And we almost had one, and I can talk to that offline, but yeah, very challenging. And so typically when you ask for people from the different commands, they usually don't give you the best people, right? Because they want them for their command. They have to give it up. They don't want to, and they're forced to because there's a mission to meet, and you typically don't get the best and the brightest, right? So I was like, oh boy, here we go. But again, I had that core group of my team that I split between the 2 ships that we had, and that was helpful. I figured at least I trust them, I know them, they can keep the whole group marching in the right direction, and so that certainly helped. As far as the missions, I'll just go through quickly. First in the green, the 1-6 bubble there, Brunswick, she comes in, my director of mission, my UK 06, he takes that ship, departs, has to go a little bit weather divert, and we'll talk about that in a little bit of why, and goes to the Republic of Marshall Islands, does a mission stop in Majuro, and then in Kwajalein, goes to Chuuk. On his way there, there's some real-world mission that we have to discuss. Oh, thank you. Perfect. Okay, so again, started in Guam here. He takes his path over to Majuro in the Marshall Islands, Kwajalein, and then on the path to Chuuk, there's a typhoon happening. And that real-world event, they had to divert and do some real-world stuff. I'll talk about that a little bit. And then they go to Chuuk, and then they make their way back up to Guam. In Guam, some of the staff actually fly back to San Diego or wherever they were from. They get to depart. They're done. The core lead group goes to Vietnam. They fly to Vietnam. The EPF is done there. They fly to Vietnam. And then at the same time, parallel path as we do this, I'm sitting here in Guam and supposed to be waiting for my ship. We'll talk about what happened there. There was a curveball. And so instead of driving to the Philippines, we fly to the Philippines with all of our gear and stuff, which we certainly expected to be sailing in. So we surprise them. We fly in, and they're like, where are your ships? We don't have any ships. And we'll talk about the why there. So we go to the Philippines, do our mission there, and then we fly into Kuching, Malaysia, and that's where we finally met our ship. She was able to pull in there. We unloaded and completed the rest of the mission there. From Kuching, we did a short stop in Singapore, got some supplies, and then made our way down to Timor-Leste down here, did our mission stop there. And then me and a few of the leadership team flies to Vietnam, meets them at the same time here. Vietnam, again, very important stop. They want the mission commander in Vietnam. Even though Captain Allen was phenomenal and great, they want the mission commander in Vietnam. And so that's why some of the leadership team had to go do that mission. And there's a lot of projects we had going on, so having myself being able to take some, and then my director of mission, Captain Allen, taking some of the other engagements were very, very helpful to be able to support. And then he also started working on the after-action report, writing the report of what we did. From Vietnam, we sailed over to Thailand and did our mission stop in Thailand, and that was our last stop, where upon completion, we traveled back down to Singapore, where we offloaded from the EPF, and mission was complete. Everyone flew home. Myself and the other ship's chief of staff had to stop at Pac Fleet along the way and give our deployment brief of what we had done and kind of recommendations for going forward. Okay. So what I would say, each of these mission stops that we did, pretty similar format. For the humanitarian aid disaster relief line of effort, you would have a subject matter expert exchange, whether it was civilians that we flew in, experts, or military if we had that capability, as well as working with their host nations, similar functions to have that exchange both back and forth. We would have typically a tabletop exercise. Pick a casualty, whether it's a tsunami, whether it was an earthquake or whatever. That's what we would talk about, and we would tabletop of what we were going to do. In a few of the stops, and I'll talk to one specifically, field training exercises where it was whole scale, real equipment, bringing it out and involving both military and civilian entities, and that was very eye-opening and certainly well received. The host nation outreach events, band performances, like I said, almost every day. Opening and closing ceremonies, typically we would host one as Pacific Partnership, and then host nation would host the other. There were other receptions, ribbon cutting ceremonies, religious key leader engagements, and sporting events. They kept us busy, certainly. For medical, community health engagements, again, subject matter expert exchanges, community health outreach teams where very few, a couple of doctors would go into the very remote areas, hours away from kind of the headquarters, and from a force protection standpoint, that always made me a little nervous. But we did do site surveys ahead of this mission, and I felt comfortable enough to let them go. Thankfully, we never had any issues there, but to remote areas where people, they're just not going to go to where we were. And so we would send them out, and that was very, very well received as well. But it also gave our medical folks the ability to teach the folks there, but trust me, we were learning a lot ourselves, being able to provide medical support in areas where we don't have the fancy tools and all the stuff that we have in our hospitals or the hospital ship. Pretty remote, and some of the things that they're able to do that we were learning from them was pretty incredible as well. And so it was good back and forth there. We also had veterinarians as part of this mission as well. Surprisingly, at least it was surprising to me, big hit in a lot of the countries. We had neutering events where literally for days they tried to get me to actually neuter a dog, and I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'll watch and I'll let you guys do it. I'm not doing it. But it again, great events, very well received, and they kept those folks pretty busy as well. And for engineering civic action programs, think building bathrooms. Seems simple. It's a separate building, but dilapidated, rundown, and just basically hole in a plank instead of now there's cement enclosed buildings, and certainly much more usable and resilient from storms or anything like that. Schools, community centers, drainage systems. The CBs that we had there, just amazing work that they can do with not a lot of resources. Health centers, and again, amazing work. We were thrown a few curveballs, and I'll talk to that right now. So I said my EPF there, Fall River FLR, was supposed to be there, and we found out as we were in Guam, she's not coming on time. And so I was supposed to be on Brunswick. I gave that to my other guy because he had a time frame that was tighter than mine. And so we waited for the Fall River. A storm was coming. Wu-tip was coming through. There were no hotels available in Guam, and so we didn't have a place to stay. We were only supposed to be there for a couple days. So thankfully, I went over, and the Navy's a family, and certainly we were hoping for support. And the Frank Cable is a submarine tender out of Guam, and she took care of us. A couple hundred people brought on board. Thankfully, she had the capability and support and open space to do that, but she took care of us for a few days. And in those few days, we changed from a sail-in mission to a fly-in mission. So providing for aircraft, and we had tons of pallets with equipment and all that stuff that we had to fly in now to a remote area of the Philippines instead of sailing in. Our ship had to go back. She did come eventually the day before we were leaving, unload some of our equipment, but not the stuff we were using in the Philippines. It was all stuff later on. because they had to go back to the Philippines, Subic Bay, and do more maintenance. She was not ready to meet the mission, and so not good. And so, again, caused us to do a little bit more planning, but we ended up going to and meet the mission in Tacloban. And so, great experience, but certainly made it more challenging. Again, first question, where's the ships? We don't have any ships. They're not here. A little embarrassing, but certainly we were able to meet the demands of the projects that we had already planned for. Okay. Super Typhoon Wu-Tip hits Federated States of Micronesia, and we're the closest assets to respond. The weather delay that they take down here way south, remember I said EPFs don't take weather good? They don't take weather good. I had, again, the UK 06s, they're throwing up as well. And so a lot of issues there. They get through it. U.S. says, hey, you're the closest asset. I need some support. So we send our ship with this EPF going to support the country of Federated States of Micronesia. Some of these islands, Chuuk and 8 other small islands that they visited and supported, they hadn't seen a U.S. Navy ship or U.S. Navy people in over 50 years. So that's the attention that you get and the people that you're seeing. We embedded with USAID they were the lead in the support for the typhoon stuff, and we embedded with them, and we would just translate, hey, this is what the Navy can provide you. And so that was a real-world experience that we had been trained prior to the mission, and we were able to execute. So that was very good. Again, influencing people, Chinese certainly have a lot more influence in this area, so anything we can do as the Navy, U.S. Navy, is value added. Bumper sticker, a lot of numbers. This is what we did on our mission, okay? A lot of things there, but it's so much more than that. This mission, again, I could spend all day. I'm not going to because I know I'm running out of time on this one. But, again, mission different than anything I've ever done before. Up close, in person, see the impact immediately as you're going and visiting these people, helping them, training them. It was absolutely incredible. Again, opposite, and I had to work that with my crew. When they pull into port, that was work time. That was not play time. That was when we did our job. And so we were working, typically it was about a 10-day mission stop. And so very challenging there. DV warfare, they wanted 3 and 4 stars at every one of these mission stops. That did not happen because they're also very busy. And so most of the time, the guy I worked for, Admiral Joey Tinch, he was Comlog Westpac out of Singapore. He supported and came to a lot of my events and some for Captain Allen as well. And so they always want that DV exposure as part of the mission stop. And then field training exercises, I talked about that. In Philippines, we did one. Again, Army, first we did the tabletop exercise to kind of talk through it, and then we did the field training exercise where there were helicopters flying, landing, picking up fake casualties that were laying all over. They had the hospital playing where ambulances were coming down the regular roads. I mean, this was a whole city and their military involved in a real life or simulated earthquake scenario. And they said it was the first time that they had ever done it. And so, again, really unique experience and certainly well received. This is what we did almost everywhere. Now, certainly some of these. So top left, community center in the Philippines. Again, building buildings that are resilient, that have multiple uses for them. And then middle one, a radio show. My PAO told me that the night before, oh, you're going to do a live radio show? And as an introvert, I don't do well with surprises. So I was, that one actually was okay. The real surprise was later that day, I did a live TV show with a host and not knowing the questions they were going to ask. And I made a doctor come with me because I wanted, they had some medical stuff I knew I wouldn't answer. And so did a live TV show in Malaysia. The one on the right, medical conference, did them at every stop that we did. A lot of, again, exchanging ideas and ways of doing business. Lower left, an orphanage. We had the band play and reading books to the students. Amazing. And then some of the fun things that we were able to do. The vets got us into a lot of really cool things. The tiger, that's actually in Thailand. There's a tiger park that our veterinarians went to show them updated ways of doing things. And so we were in that cage with the tiger, and the only thing we had was one guy with a little stick, and that was supposed to protect us. In fact, the comments they said is, when you pet the tiger, hit them hard so they think they know it's you and not like a fly, because they will swat. And you could get hurt. And so you really had to be rough with these animals. We got to, I say, wrestle a crocodile. It was my Master Chief in front, my Aussie in the back, and myself got to wrestle a crocodile, so to speak. And then in Thailand, they have a turtle rehab center where they're breeding turtles, and then they release them as they get to a certain age. And we were able to release turtles while we were in Thailand. Again, some really unique, amazing experiences. Okay. Keys to success. The picture, I surprised, this was my translator in Vietnam. It was her birthday. Very shy girl. We called her up at an event in the evening. The band was playing, and we stopped for a minute. We brought her up there and gave her a birthday cake. Admiral Tinch is the one on the right. Played along with it. It was absolutely fantastic. But I put this up there just because I see it's the key to success for not only this mission, but it was the key to my success in the Navy writ large. It is all about the people. All about the people. You have to get to know them. You have to build relationships. The first time you talk can't be when you're on the phone asking for help. You need to have that established, and certainly these missions and these things that we're doing build those relationships. Some may not appreciate some of these soft power missions that we accomplished, but they break down the doors to the countries for access, potential basing, overflight, if and when we would ever need them. And so critical information. And then finally, just a few of the events. Major General Logan came from Hawaii. He's a reservist, but came in and was a DV for the Philippines closing ceremony, receiving a plaque from the locals. Admiral Tinch in the Republic of Marshall Islands, talking to the kids, right? Kids don't care who you are. They just want to have fun and talk. And certainly he was magnificent at that. Bottom left, that was a closing ceremony, rendering honors for myself and Admiral Tinch behind me. And then bottom right here, Captain Allen, my UK brethren, greeting Rear Admiral Chatfield in the Federated States of Micronesia. Again, very DV-oriented. They try to get as many as they can. Admiral Tinch was a linchpin and certainly supported most of them. I am certainly available after this. I will stick around if you have any questions. I am happy to talk, but I know we're at our end game. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions. And Ron, certainly if you want me to, we'll go sit down and talk. Okay. Absolutely.
Great, Randy. So what is the military term for these kinds of peacetime missions? What do you guys call these kinds of missions?
So I would say, for these missions, we typically talk about soft power missions, of where, hey, we're not going there to deliver bombs or teach them tactical, specific events. This is, again, under the umbrella of humanitarian aid and disaster relief. Not unlike what we do for a lot of cities in our own nation here. San Francisco Fleet Week. We come up and we do humanitarian aid, disaster relief with the citizens of San Francisco, with the civilian authorities, to make sure, again, that first time you hear us on the phone, it's like, who are you? when you need help. It's no, we've done this before. I know who this is. That's John. That's Greg. And hey, what do you need? That's how we get support. It's building those relationships before you need it, and that certainly is part of it.
So what's the command structure? Who's in charge of all humanitarian aid in the Navy, and who do they report up to?
Yeah, so there is not one person. It is based on the combatant commander. So that area, certainly for my mission, was Indo-Pacific, was in charge of humanitarian assistance, disaster relief for that area. With that, it flowed down through Pacific Fleet because it was a Navy-specific mission, so they had the lead on it. It then flowed down to 7th Fleet because I was in 7th Fleet's waters, and then their representative for 7th Fleet was Commodore Westpac out of Singapore, and that was Admiral Tinch. And so that was kind of the chain of command, and then I reported directly to Admiral Tinch.
So what's the Navy budget for these kinds of humanitarian relief annually?
I have no idea.
We spend $800 billion on the military. I'm wondering how much we spend of that on humanitarian aid.
Yeah, if I was again, I don't know the number, but I can tell you it would be probably a small percentage.
Mm-hmm. Who measures the value of these humanitarian aid activities, missions?
Yeah, again, I'm going to give you my perspective on this. I can tell you. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
So I can tell you that my perception is when I was doing the mission, Admiral Tinch was very engaged. I think Pac Fleet was very engaged. I'm not sure everybody else was engaged as far as the things we were doing. We wrote a paper after our mission was done to address leadership of why it was so important to continue these missions and what it gave us. That paper was actually well received. I know the current Pac Fleet commander, Admiral Paparo, is very, very engaged and wants more of these missions. In fact, this last year, they did 2 missions, first time ever. They did 2 Pacific partnerships this year. In fact, the last one it started in November. It just ended, I want to say, last week, and one of my friends was the mission commander for it. And so, very engaged, absolutely. This is pretty critical. And it really come about was last fall, there was a couple, I think it was typhoons that happened, and U.S. was not there right away. And then when we did come in, we didn't have the resources. It was a destroyer that didn't have the capability to have helicopters, and so they couldn't really provide much. And it kind of gave us a little bit of a black eye, and it's like, okay, when we do these missions, we want to do them during the time frame where we are there, when they could potentially have real-world events. We want to make sure we have the right ships supporting this, so
Sure.
that way we can support and be on scene first. Pretty critical to get our face, our name, build those relationships, and so you need to be there to do that. And so that's why I believe going forward, the Pacific Partnership mission won't be during the summer months. It'll actually be during the fall when the storm seasons are more prevalent in the Western Pacific.
So if you could define the best way to measure the value of these, how would you propose? What would be the way to measure them? And John, also shake the TV, the laptop monitor so the image comes back on the screen, please. John Bechtel. Okay. How would you? Yeah. There we go. What's the best way to measure?
I think the best way to measure would be asking the countries, and what did we do for you, and seeing the, how they respond to natural disasters after you leave. You know, did the things that we taught them or worked with them on, were they better? Could they accommodate the event? I think that's probably the best way. And those that, how many times are the countries asking to come back for the second year, the third year, up to the 19th year? are they asking for us to come back because they see its value added? And then the end game would be, hey, if something really happens, are we having better access to getting into those countries and potentially utilizing them for other things, right? Certainly, I think our access to the Philippines has gotten better, and they have been a part of this from the beginning.
So how many people do you think were affected? That is to say, at the recipient end, what do you think the number of people who got kids who went to school and college, in schools you built, nurses who went to seminars that you conducted? Give us a round, ballpark kind of number.
I would say hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands, okay.
Absolutely.
So now China has this Belt and Road Initiative worldwide, and they're wanting to have a kind of ambassadorial role around the country, around the world, where they will help people in Pakistan build roads, help people in Africa, get construction projects underway. But there is a lot of criticism about the strings that they put on such, quote, gifts. They don't turn out to be gifts, they turn out to be loans at high interest rates, et cetera. So how familiar are you with Belt and Road, and how do you compare? First of all, how familiar are you with Belt and Road?
I've certainly heard the term. I've been briefed on some of the things that they have done. The difference that when we go into these countries and do these things, there are no strings attached. They are part of the design of the mission itself. They have core country teams that our country teams work with. We work with our ambassadors that are in the country that are working with those teams to say, this is what they want, this is what we can support. And so they are part of designing this project. And so
they meaning the recipients.
Exactly. And we're going in there, not only are we helping to build some of these things, they're with us. And that's, I think, is the difference in that when China goes in, they're bringing their own workers and they're building these things, and the host country is not, they get the end game of it with all the strings that you're talking about. When we go in, we're working with them and building up them. So that way they have the resiliency and the capacity to meet whatever challenges are coming their way in the future. And so I think that's the difference.
You are accurate in saying that one of the criticisms of Belt and Road is that, just what you said, they use their own workers, whether they're imported or not. They use a lot of Indian workers in Africa and so on, but they don't really employ many of the local people who are recipients of such trade aid.
That's right.
So now, you've been describing these missions, but they're all in peacetime settings. We're listening every day to what's going on in Iraq. Those folks do need a lot of help. They're being bombed constantly by the Russians. And we're listening to what's happening in, Israel. These are incredible missions. Do you only work in these kind of humanitarian capacities in more peaceful settings? Tell us about that.
Yeah, certainly. I think as we prepared for the different locations, force protection was always a top priority and consideration of going into the countries that we're going to, the locations that we were going to in those countries. Force protection was a major consideration. We didn't have, we had some master at arms, our policemen, so to speak, with us. We did site visits. NCIS would come in and take a look as well, but we don't have, we're not coming in there with an army. We're not coming in there with a lot of weapons and stuff like that. So we absolutely wouldn't go into a wartime or war-torn scenario. It had to be safe for the people that we were bringing in. Some of these folks they're not Marines charging the hill, right? They are medical providers, dentists. Not that they don't go into harm's way, they do, but that was not what this mission was about.
So did you have communications officers assigned to your group to spread the word in the local population about the good work that you're doing?
Absolutely. It was, again, one of the things you saw the picture of, the radio conversations that we have. Radio interviews. So they were publicizing that. On some of the pictures, you see the big screens of Pacific Partnership. They were located throughout the cities that we were in. The radio or the TV show that I got so I tracked down and had to do. So absolutely, we did Admiral Tinch and I with the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Timor-Leste, did news conferences. Almost every place I went, I had a news conference, and 30 news cameras and microphones in my face. And again, for an introvert, that first one was a wake-up call. That was pretty challenging for me. My PAO had to do a little bit of work to get me where I needed to be. I had some softballs that I could answer, which was great, but it was pretty challenging. And it was a big deal for these countries for us to be there.
So who does the physical construction? Are those local contractors you pick, or are they CBs? Are they Army Corps of Engineer? Who are the construction people?
Yeah, we had Army Corps of Engineers and CBs working together to build. Now, some projects were CBs only, some were combined, but there were our forces working with some of their locals. They did not have any construction folks. That was all our work. They had, the school superintendent or something would be out there, and they'd have some folks there taking a look, making sure it was what they had asked for and what they were getting after, and some local people that lived close by. But as far as construction workers, no, that was us.
So summarize the biggest benefits of these kinds of programs. Give us a short couple sentence summary. Benefits.
Well, one, which was the design, the overall goal of what we were trying to do, which is building humanitarian assistance and disaster relief resiliency and capacity. And that was the main goal, is to get them to a little bit more prepared state, so that way when it does happen, they can be more prepared. And certainly, we're still going to go help them, but the further along they would be with their own help, they'd be better off for it.
What are the main risks of such peacetime programs?
I think the way we do business, when I say we, the United States, the way we make decisions, it is much quicker and more, let me describe this. We'll make a decision, hey, we're going to do Pacific Partnership 19. We start in planning about a year ahead of time. These folks, their cycles are years. And so for them, they wanted to know about the plan 2 years ago. And so for money and how they make decisions as countries is not as quick as what we did. And so sometimes we were, I wouldn't say imposing, but certainly it was challenging to get them to have decisions to say, yes, these are the approved projects that all of us agree to, because it took so long to get through their governments to get approvals. Ours were very quick. We had authority at a much lower level. They did not have that authority, which is why Vietnam was so challenging. It had to go all the way up. And so any changes took a long time.
So it's interesting. I'm old enough to remember when you saw television or movie coverage of other countries. If you look at the diplomats in Russia, Hungary, Austria, the Far East, China, Japan, literally half a century ago, they were always in their native gear. They were wearing the native uniforms. The Japanese officials looked like they were dressed Japanese. And nowadays, when you look at the news, the people in Japan or the people in China and in Hungary and so on, they all look like and dress like Western democracies. And one of the roles and one of the sort of like hallmarks of leadership is people do what you do. People want to look like you and act like you. And I don't think everybody realizes one of the values of American international leadership is that they then want to buy our products. They want to buy our soft drinks. They want to go to our movies. They want to look at our entertainment. And I think one of the values that you are bringing to our country that not everybody understands is that you're demonstrating a very positive side of America to these foreign countries that otherwise might only see movies about what happened in foreign conflicts where there was lots of gun battles and so on. And so I want to really thank you for serving our country via the military in such a unique and really seemingly positive way on a very high ROI. That is to say, the amount of money you spend for the kind of benefit you can provide, it seems to me, as a great kind of, as a business guy, great ROI. So thanks so very much, Captain Rossum.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
And with that, we end the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.
This has been a presentation of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.